Very few people wake up in the morning thinking, I need more control. What we usually say is something much more innocent. I just want everything to be okay. I just want some certainty. I just want to know what's going to happen. Control rarely introduces itself by name. It disguises itself as the desire to feel safe. At first, that seems harmless. Who doesn't want stability? Who doesn't want clarity? Who doesn't want to know that the people they love will be okay? That tomorrow will work out? That the future will be kinder than the past? The desire itself isn't the problem. It's what we quietly begin sacrificing in order to satisfy it. Control has a remarkable ability to disguise itself as wisdom. It convinces us that if we think about something long enough, prepare enough, anticipate enough, we'll eventually arrive at certainty. But certainty has always been an illusion. Life has never promised it. And yet we spend so much of our lives negotiating with uncertainty, as though enough planning could persuade tomorrow to reveal itself early. The strange thing is that control doesn't usually make us feel safer. It makes us feel responsible for things that were never ours to carry. The future, other people's choices, the opinions of strangers, outcomes we haven't reached, problems that haven't happened. Our minds begin living everywhere except the place our lives are actually unfolding. Maybe that's why anxiety has become so common. Not because life suddenly became uncertain. Life has always been uncertain. Perhaps what's changed is our willingness to accept uncertainty as part of being alive. We mistake uncertainty for danger, and once we do that, the mind gets to work. It rehearses conversations that haven't happened. It prepares for losses that haven't arrived. It argues with futures that don't yet exist. Thinking begins to feel productive. Worry begins to feel responsible. Control begins to feel necessary, but none of those things bring peace. They simply make us tired. There came a point where I realized I wasn't only grieving what had happened, I was grieving the future I kept trying to negotiate into existence. That sentence changed something in me, because I realized how much of my suffering wasn't coming from reality. It was coming from my resistance to reality, from the quiet insistence that life should have unfolded differently. I wasn't holding on to a person as much as I was holding on to a version of tomorrow that only existed in my imagination. And then I noticed something. This wasn't only true in relationships. We do this with careers, with money, with our health, with our children, with our plans, with the timeline we've written for our lives. We become attached not only to outcomes, but to the belief that they must happen in the way we've imagined. When they don't, we don't just lose an expectation. We lose the future we had already started living inside our minds. Some hopes don't keep us alive. They keep us standing still. Hope is beautiful, until it stops helping us embrace reality and starts helping us avoid it. There's a quiet arrogance hidden inside control, not the arrogance of believing we're better than other people. The arrogance of believing our persistence can persuade life to unfold according to our plans, as though enough effort could eliminate uncertainty, as though enough worrying could prevent pain, as though enough fear could somehow prepare us for everything that might happen. It can't. Control asks us to carry tomorrow before we finish living today, and that's a weight the human heart was never designed to bear. The irony is that while we're busy trying to protect ourselves from the future, we slowly stop experiencing the present. We overlook ordinary joys because we're preoccupied with imaginary disasters. We miss today's blessings because we're busy negotiating tomorrow's possibilities. Without even realizing it, anxiety narrows our vision. Instead of seeing what's here, we become consumed by what might disappear. And when that happens, gratitude quietly begins to fade. Not because life has become empty, but because fear has become too loud for gratitude to be heard. The remarkable thing about fear is that it never arrives alone. It brings urgency with it. The feeling that something must be solved, something must be fixed, something must be secured before we can finally rest. So we postpone peace. I'll relax when I know. I'll be grateful when things improve. I'll trust God when I can see where this is going. Without noticing, peace becomes a destination instead of a way of traveling. but life has never waited for certainty before asking us to live it. Perhaps that's why gratitude and control struggle to exist in the same heart. Control is always leaning into tomorrow. Gratitude is always rooted in today. One asks, "What if everything falls apart?" The other quietly replies, "Look at what's still here." That doesn't mean gratitude ignores suffering. It simply refuses to let suffering become the only thing it sees. And maybe that's why gratitude feels so powerful. It gently returns us to reality. Not the imagined reality we've been rehearsing in our minds, the one that's actually unfolding in front of us. I've often wondered whether peace is less about changing our circumstances and more about changing where our attention lives. Because wherever attention goes, our lives eventually follow. If attention lives in tomorrow, today begins to disappear. If attention lives in fear, possibilities become invisible. If attention lives in comparison, contentment always feels one step away. But when attention returns to the present, something begins to soften. We notice conversations we would have rushed through, moments we would have overlooked, kindness we would have dismissed, blessings that fear quietly edited out of the picture. Maybe that's what people mean when they say their lives changed after they let go. Not because the world suddenly became kinder, but because fear was no longer occupying every room in their mind. What had always been there could finally be received. I don't believe trust means pretending everything will work out exactly as we hope. Life has given all of us enough evidence to know that it doesn't. Trust is something quieter than optimism. It's the decision to stop demanding certainty before allowing yourself to experience peace. Faith doesn't promise that nothing painful will happen. It reminds us that we don't walk through pain alone. There's a quiet freedom in recognizing where our responsibility ends. We are responsible for our choices, our character, our effort, the love we give, the integrity we live with. But we were never asked to control outcomes. We were never asked to carry tomorrow. We were never asked to write a story that only God can see from beginning to end. Looking back, I realized that some of the heaviest burdens I ever carried were never placed on my shoulders. I picked them up because I believed worrying was a form of preparation, because I believed control was a form of wisdom, because I believed peace had to be earned. None of those things were true. Peace was never waiting at the end of certainty. It was waiting at the end of surrender. Not surrender to circumstances, surrender to the reality that I was never meant to be in control of everything. Maybe that's what faith has always been inviting us into. Not a life without questions, not a life without loss, not a life without uncertainty, but a life where uncertainty no longer has the final say, where gratitude speaks louder than fear, where trust is stronger than the need to know, where today's gifts are no longer sacrificed for tomorrow's worries. The future will always remain partly hidden. Perhaps that's a gift, because if we could see every twist before it came, we might never learn to trust the one who already can. For all of us, there comes a moment when this stops being an idea and becomes something we have to live. For me, that moment came when I exhausted every part of myself trying to save a future that refused to be saved. No matter how much I loved, I couldn't make someone stay. No matter how much I prayed, I couldn't make someone become the husband or father I hoped they would be. No matter how much I feared it, I couldn't stop addiction from being someone else's choice. And no matter how desperately I tried, I couldn't stop my marriage from ending. For a long time, I thought that was the day I lost control. Now I realize it was the day I discovered I never had it. What saved me wasn't finally finding a way to control my future. What saved me was trusting God enough to stop carrying a future that had never been mine to carry. That was the beginning of my peace. And when I look back now, I realize that's what saved me. Again.